It's funny. When you drop a glass in the kitchen and it shatters, the mistake is obvious.
Yeah. It's physical. It's right there in front of you.
Exactly. You grab a broom, you sweep it up, and you just move on. But when you drop the ball on a major life decision,
Oh, there's no broom for that.
right, when you fail at a business or miss a massive opportunity or just completely mess up a relationship, the mess is entirely inside your head. And for you, the listener tuning in right now, that internal mess is exactly what we are going to explore today. Welcome to the deep dive.
It's a critical mission, really, because, well, we all fail. Everyone listening to this right now has a catalog of regrets playing on a loop. But the difference between the people who get paralyzed by that mental mess and those who somehow use it as fuel,
Yeah.
that comes down entirely to the cognitive mechanics of how they view a mistake.
Oh, for sure. So to figure this out, we're taking the hard neuroscience of regret and counterfactual thinking, and we're blending it with Carol Dweck's famous psychology research on mindsets.
Right, and we're filtering all of that through the real-world philosophies of Sadhguru and Dr. Miles Monroe. Plus, we're looking at some incredible case studies of famous failures from Brad Aronson.
Yeah, the thread tying all of this together is that setbacks are inevitable for you, but your reaction to them is highly programmable.
Though before we can reprogram anything, we have to look at the architecture of the what if. Like, we need to understand what your brain is actually doing the second things go wrong.
Right, what's actually happening under the hood.
Exactly. In cognitive psychology, this mechanism is called counterfactual thinking, or CFT. The moment your reality doesn't match your ideal state, your brain starts aggressively running simulations of alternative outcomes.
Okay, let's unpack this, because these simulations aren't all the same, are they? Upward counterfactual thinking is like having a mental undo button that doesn't actually work. You just keep clicking it and getting an error message.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it.
You think, like, if only I had studied harder, I would have passed. You are imagining a structurally better outcome.
And that upward comparison is highly functional. I mean, it fuels motivation. It helps you identify the exact variable you messed up so you can, fix it next time.
But the immediate cost is that it hurts.
Oh, it causes intense negative emotion, absolutely. But on the flip side, your brain also does downward CFT.
Which is when you imagine a worse outcome.
Exactly. Think about the last time you made a huge mistake at work. Did you immediately tell yourself, well, at least I didn't get fired?
Oh, yeah. All the time. It's a defense mechanism.
It totally is. Downward CFT doesn't necessarily help you improve your skills, but it brings immediate emotional relief. You're soothing yourself by imagining a darker timeline that you luckily avoided.
Which naturally brings up a pretty heavy distinction from the clinical research. We throw around the words regret and remorse in casual conversation like they're the exact same thing, but they really aren't.
Yeah, let's slow down and look at that, because the emotional weight is completely different. Regret is essentially a self-focused disappointment.
Like that cognitive what-if loop you were just talking about.
Right. You regret buying a car that breaks down a week later. It sucks for you. Remorse, however, carries a profound moral weight. It involves deep guilt, a sense of personal accountability, and a powerful drive to make amends.
Because you feel remorse when your actions actively harm someone else.
Precisely. And time warps these feelings in such a bizarre way. The temporal pattern of regret in the research shows that if you ask someone what they regret in the short term, say over the last week, they will almost always point to their actions, the things they actually did.
Because the immediate sting of a bad decision is sharp.
Right.
The consequences are right in your face.
Yes, but when researchers ask people to look back over their entire lifetimes, the data flips completely. In the long term, looking back at our lives, we overwhelmingly regret our inactions.
Wow.
We regret the things we didn't do, the chances we didn't take.
I guess because actions have finite consequences. If you start a business and it fails, you know exactly how much money you lost. It has an ending. But if you never start the business, the what if is just infinite. Your brain can forever imagine a billionaire outcome that you missed out on. It's like this boundless void of possibility.
That's the exact mechanism. The imaginary potential of inaction grows over time, whereas the pain of a failed action fades. And yet, fascinatingly, regardless of the timeline, we almost always feel more personally responsible for our direct actions.
But wait, I have to push back here.
Okay, go for it.
If downward counterfactual thinking, imagining how things could have been worse, makes us feel better, why does our brain default to upward thinking? Like, why does our brain choose to hit that broken undo button and make us miserable right after a failure instead of just soothing us?
Because your brain's primary job isn't to make you happy. Its job is to keep you alive and progressing. Upward counterfactual thinking is your brain's error identification system.
So it's sounding a blaring alarm.
Exactly. It floods you with negative emotion to force you to pay attention to the mistake, ensuring you update your mental model so you don't make the same error in the future. It's actively trading your short-term comfort for your long-term adaptation.
Okay, so if upward counterfactual thinking is our brain's alarm bell telling us we messed up, how do we answer that alarm without letting it, deafen us? Because a lot of people just freeze when that alarm goes off.
They do. And based on our sources, the answer lies entirely in our mindset. We have to look at Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research here.
Oh, the fix versus growth mindset stuff.
Right. She identified that people generally navigate life with one of two core mindsets regarding their own intelligence and abilities. The first is a fixed mindset. If you have this, you believe your traits are carved in stone, you have a set amount of intelligence or talent, and that's just your lot in life.
Here's where it gets really interesting. A fixed mindset treats life like a standardized test where every single mistake lowers your final score forever. If you fail, it means you literally are a failure,
Yes, it becomes a permanent identity.
which naturally leads people to hide their deficiencies and avoid taking risks. But a growth mindset treats life like a video game. Failing a level just means you get continue, insert coin screen, and now you know exactly where the traps are.
I love that video game framing because in a video game, the traps don't change. You just get better at navigating them.
Exactly.
In a growth mindset, the hand you're dealt is just a starting point. Failure isn't a condemnation of your character. It's simply a data point. It's a problem to be solved. And we need to be clear for the listener here, this isn't just a motivational poster with a kitten hanging on a branch saying, hang in there.
Right. It's not just positive thinking.
No, it is a biological, neurological reality.
We're talking about neuroplasticity.
Yes. When you push yourself out of your comfort zone to learn something difficult, or when you struggle through a failure, your brain literally wraps a fatty substance called myelin around your neural pathways.
Wow. So it's upgrading your brain's wiring from dial-up to fiber optic.
That's exactly what's happening. The struggle is the actual physical mechanism of growth. You literally increase your cognitive capacity by failing and trying again.
Dweck highlights this incredible real-world application with a high school in Chicago. When students there didn't pass a course, they didn't get an F on their report card, they got a grade of not yet.
Not yet. I mean, think about the cognitive shift there. An F tells a student they're at a dead end. They are a failure.
But not yet puts them on a learning curve. It gives them a path into the future.
It tells the brain that the upward counterfactual alarm bell we talked about is just a waypoint, not a final destination.
Which means how we praise people, and honestly how you, the listener, praise yourself, needs to fundamentally change. You have to stop praising innate intelligence or talent.
It's actually harmful to do that.
Yeah. When you tell a kid or a colleague that they are so smart, you're actually pushing them into a fragile, fixed mindset. Because the second they struggle with something new, their brain says, uh-oh, I guess I'm not smart anymore. We have to praise the process, the effort, the strategy, the perseverance.
Because process praise creates resilience. It teaches you to value the friction.
So if we adopt this, continue, insert coin growth mindset, what does that actually look like when we hit rock bottom in the real world? Because it's one thing to say not yet on a high school math test, and another to face massive, crushing life failures where you lose your savings or your career.
Well, we look at how highly successful people process those massive failures, and the secret is they don't have fewer failures. They just have a completely different relationship with them. They use that upward counterfactual thinking as an engineering tool.
Brad Aronson's compilation of famous failures is an absolute masterclass in this. Let's look at James Dyson. He didn't just fail a few times. He made 5,126 failed vacuum prototypes over 5 long years before he got it right.
And think about the mechanics of that. Prototype number 5,124 didn't work. His brain ran an upward counterfactual simulation. If I tweak the cyclone angle by 2 degrees, the suction might hold.
Right. He didn't take it personally.
No, he didn't view prototype 5,124 as an indictment of his worth as an inventor. He viewed it as a necessary stepping stone to get the data for 5,125.
Or look at Jack Adraka. He was a 15-year-old kid who had an idea for a pancreatic cancer test. He wrote up his proposals and was rejected by 199 different research labs.
199 rejections.
Imagine being a teenager and collecting 199 professional rejection letters. but he kept pushing his insert coin button until Johns Hopkins finally said yes.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
ended up creating a test 100 times better than the existing standard.
And we see this pattern everywhere because the mechanism works. Steve Jobs being publicly ousted from Apple, the company he literally built, J.K. Rowling living on welfare as a divorced single mother, getting her manuscript ejected a dozen times before a publisher took a chance.
You wouldn't throw away your winter coat just because it's summer, right?
Mhm.
You know the seasons will change. So why do we throw away our hope permanently just because we're in a temporary winter of failure?
That brings us directly to the philosophy of Dr. Miles Monroe. He talks extensively about navigating the seasons of crisis. We tend to panic when a massive failure or crisis hits because we feel entirely out of control.
Which makes sense. It's terrifying.
It is. And Monroe defines a crisis exactly that way. It is an event over which we have absolutely no control.
But the defining characteristic of a crisis is that it's bound by seasons.
Yes, seasons guarantee change. Nothing remains the same forever. If you are in a winter of unemployment or a winter of a failed relationship, the very nature of a season dictates that a spring is coming. Monroe points out that in both the Japanese and Chinese languages, the word used for crisis directly translates to opportunity.
There's a brilliant story from our sources that illustrates this beautifully. Two young business students travel to India. They are standing on a dusty street looking out over a city, and they see millions of people walking around entirely barefoot.
Okay, yeah.
The first student looks at this and is overwhelmed by the tragic poverty. He sees a hopeless crisis, just a dead end.
But the second student is standing on the exact same street, looking at the exact same barefoot population, and he sees an unprecedented opportunity. He sees a massive, untapped shoe market. He drops out, designs a cheap plastic shoe that costs 15 cents to manufacture, sells it for 50 cents, and within a year, he's a multimillionaire.
Both men looked at the exact same reality. One saw a dead end, the other saw a starting line. But I have to ask you, how can the listener actively look for the shoe business in their own personal disasters? When you're in the middle of a crisis, it doesn't feel like an opportunity. It just feels like raw pain.
What's fascinating here is that crisis literally forces creativity by breaking your routines.
Oh, because you can't rely on the old ways anymore?
Exactly. When the economy is booming or when your life is easy, you rely on old systems because they work. You operate on autopilot. But when a crisis hits, those foundations crumble. Old systems stop working entirely. You are forced to invent new ways to deal with old problems. The crisis strips away the superficial noise and leaves you with the raw materials of opportunity.
It's incredibly inspiring to look for opportunity. But is it enough to just throw blind effort at a problem until we succeed? Like if I just grind and work 100 hours a week at anything, will that growth mindset guarantee a win?
This is a crucial distinction, and it's where the insights from Sadhguru provide a very necessary reality check. We have a cultural obsession with glorifying hard work, but Sadhguru argues that blind effort is actually foolish. Just laboring without direction won't get you anywhere except exhausted.
It's like driving a car 100 miles an hour. If you have a muddy windshield, you're just going to crash faster.
Yeah, that's the perfect way to visualize it. Sadhguru emphasizes that effort must be paired with perception and active intelligence. Perception is stopping to clean the mud off your windshield so you can actually see the road.
You have to be able to see life exactly as it is.
Yes, without the distortion of your own ego or your anxieties or your upward counterfactuals blinding you. He notes that some of the most intelligent people are also the most miserable simply because they have an active intellect, but absolutely no perception of reality. They are grinding away at the wrong things.
And that really ties into how we define the goal of all this effort in the first place. Sadhguru makes a sharp distinction between true success and what he calls a sickness.
Right. If your idea of success is sitting on top of someone else's head, if your entire drive is purely about dominating others, crushing the competition, or having everyone look up to you, that isn't success. That is a psychological sickness.
It's a toxic motivation.
Exactly. True success, in his view, is simply living your life to your absolute full potential, making yourself into a full-fledged human being.
Dr. Monroe takes this philosophical idea of fulfilling your potential and brings it right down to the practical everyday level by making a massive distinction between a job and work.
This is one of the most powerful paradigm shifts you can make for your own career. A job is what you are trained to do. It is your daily career, your current gig, your 9 to 5. And because a job is external, it can be taken away from you at any moment. You can be fired from a job.
But your work is different.
Yes, your work is your innate gift. It is what you were uniquely born to do. No one can ever fire you from your true work.
Monroe tells this amazing story about a woman he calls the cookie lady. Her job was making beds as a maid in a hotel. That was her 9 to 5. But she had this hidden, innate talent for baking. That was her work.
And instead of just keeping it a weekend hobby, she leans into it. She bakes these incredible cookies and starts bringing them to the hotel, giving them away for free to the guests and staff.
Which seems crazy when you're a maid struggling to pay bills. But she was actively building demand for her gift. She was transitioning from her job to her true work.
And people loved them.
Oh, the demand exploded. Within a year, she went from making beds to driving a Rolls-Royce, owning a massive cookie factory, and employing 182 people. Her job was temporary, but her work built an empire.
It's a fantastic story.
So what does this all mean? I want to push back gently here because the cookie lady is a beautiful romantic story. But let's be real. Not everyone has an obvious cookie talent. Not everyone wakes up knowing exactly what their innate gift is. How does a listener differentiate their day job from their life's work when they are just exhausted trying to pay the rent and keep the lights on?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you don't have to quit your job tomorrow to find your work. In fact, your job is often the very thing that funds, trains, and refines your work.
Okay, how so?
Monroe uses the historical example of Moses. Moses spent years working as a shepherd in the desert. That was his job. He was managing sheep. But he used that mundane job to learn the difficult terrain, to learn how to lead a stubborn flock, to find water in barren places.
Oh.
He used his job to prepare for his ultimate work, which was leading his people through that exact same desert. The job is just the training ground.
That is such a practical takeaway. You don't have to resent the job that pays the bills as long as you recognize it as a stepping stone, as long as you are using it to gather the skills for your true work.
Exactly.
So for you, the listener, let's recap this journey we've been on today. We started by looking under the hood at your brain's internal alarm system, those what-if loops of counterfactual thinking that make us feel regret.
We realize that the alarm isn't there to torture you, it's there to teach you.
Right. We looked at how shifting to a growth mindset and embracing the power of not yet literally, physically rewires the myelin in your brain. We learned how to weather the seasons of crisis, knowing that the winter of failure always gives way to spring, and how to look at a barefoot crowd and see a shoe business.
And finally, we explored the shift from blind effort to perceptive action and the vital difference between the job you can be fired from and the true work you were born to do. This raises an important question, and it's the thought I want to leave you with today. We know from the data that when you look back at the end of your life, you are going to deeply regret the things you didn't do far more than the things you did. The inactions haunt us. So what if the heavy, painful regret you might be feeling right now over a recent failure isn't a punishment? What if it's actually your mind's clunky, awkward way of pointing you directly toward the exact work you were meant to do all along?
The mess isn't the end of the story. It's just the insert coin screen. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep growing. We'll catch you next time.